Hey everybody, welcome to Elemental Cartomancy. Thank you for visiting my channel. I am here with a VR2 Logan at Larkin Legend. This is a hashtag Tarot Firsts. I will put a link to Logan's original video in the description, so definitely check that out if you've not seen it. But this will be my response to each of the prompts. So without further ado, my first encounter with tarot is the first prompt. So I'm going to split this into two because my first encounter with tarot was hearing my mum talk about it when I was really young. My mum worked in a pub and they used to hold tarot nights, and my mum would come home and tell us all about what the tarot reader told her about getting her fortune told, essentially. And I just thought it was really kind of exciting and fascinating, and I could never wait to hear what the tarot reader had told her. So that was my first encounter. But if you mean in person, then it would be when my mum took me to buy my first tarot deck when I was really young, around about 8, I want to say, but I can't remember what exact age I was. Um, but yeah, we after hearing all the stories, um, I said to my mum, "Oh, can I get one?" And she took me to Waterstones, and we got my first tarot deck. So that was my first in-person encounter with it. My first tarot deck, nice segue, is this one. I'm going to turn on the table camera so as I can show you it. Everyone will have seen this though. It's the original Rider-Waite tarot deck. It's the one with the roses and lilies back, the blue and white one. And lots of people aren't too keen on this deck just because of the colouring. Because I think more modern versions of it are worse for it, but it can be quite blotchy. I quite like it though, just because it was my first, and you always. This is in order. I didn't realise this was. Oh no. That's odd. The majors are in order, but the minors aren't. I've no idea why that's like that. Anyway, the next one. So that was the first mass market. My first indie tarot was Trionfi de la Luna. And I think I maybe got this around about 2016. And I've got the English titles version. These are the backs. And this is, of course, by Patrick Valenza, the same creator as the Deviant Moon. So yeah, this is a really beautiful deck. It is Marseille style, but obviously with a huge difference. So that was my first indie tarot deck. The next prompt is first Kickstarter tarot deck, and that was this lovely deck, the Chakra Healing Tarot by my very good friend Malamir Logan. And this is a beautiful deck, and it's because of this deck really that I've taught myself a lot about the chakras, and I'm able to incorporate a lot of that meaning into readings that I do, whether it's with this deck or with other decks. It's taught me a lot about colour essentially, because each of the chakras are aligned to a colour, and they therefore each have meaning. So this is a beautiful deck. These are the backs, and I believe this is still available on. I don't know where it is, but I will find a link and I will post it. So this is the Chakra Healing Tarot by Malamir Logan, and that was my first Kickstarter. The next question is, who was your first tarot tuber? So I found tarot tube a long, long time ago, certainly way before I started my channel. And how I was able to find it was I was looking for information on this deck, The Witch's Tarot by Ellen Cannon Reid and Martin Cannon. And it was actually Kelly Bear's channel that I found first. She had a hilarious walkthrough of this deck. She kind of read it for absolute filth. Um, but I loved it, and that was that was how I found TarotTube, and I've been watching ever since. But yeah, it was I was trying to find information on this deck, specifically the borderless version of this deck, because they did a more recent version that had like the black border. Um, but I was always wanted to find the borderless version, and I eventually managed to find it. So yeah, Kelly Bear's channel was my very first tarot tube that I found. Your first tarot book. So if I don't know whether this will count. So this is a book that it's a companion book to a deck, the Jonathan D Tarot. I just call it because it's like it's just called Tarot. Um, but these are what the cards look like. This was the first proper book, unless you're counting Little White Books, which I don't think it does. This was the first, half decent book that had a decent amount of information on the cards. Um, if we're not counting companion books, guidebooks, then oh, it is there. I'm like surrounded by shite. This was the first book that isn't a companion book. It's called The Secrets of Tarot. It's by Annie Lionette. And I really, really like this book. This taught me a lot, so it did. Um, I think I've actually gifted this book since. It's got a lot of spreads. It's got some information on, how the tarot began, and how to look after your deck, and as well as loads of valuable information on the actual meanings of the cards. And it has lots of different kind of a decks pictured in it. So yeah, great wee book. And that was pretty sure that was the first non-guidebook book that I got. My first tarot podcast. All right, so a bit of a story here. So I have never been a podcast person, and it wasn't until I was watching Logan's video to this that I actually made a point in listening to a podcast. So my first tarot podcast was the one that he recommended, and that was Wildly Tarot, which is fantastic, by the way. So if anyone's watching this and hasn't listened to Wildly Tarot, Holly and Esther are such lovely people, and they've got such a great, joyful, and funny energy about them. So definitely check that out. But it was funny because I watched Logan's video. I heard he'd obviously mentioned that podcast. At the same time, my husband, who, as far as I'm aware, has never been much of a podcast person either, started watching this podcast. It's called "Help! I Sexted My Boss." It's a podcast that's here in the UK and it's quite popular. Check it out if you've not seen it because it's really, really funny. Um, so he started watching that, and then I started listening to Holly and Esther. And it's kind of a snowball because now I feel like a proper podcaster where I've got a few podcasts that I'm listening to. But it all started just a week ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago, with Wildly Tarot. First tarot course, that doesn't apply because I've never taken an official tarot course. First major tarot teaching that you relearned in a way that's better suited you, probably numerology and what each of the numbers in the tarot means. I found that I basically just sat at one point and thought, right, I put all the aces together, all the twos, all the threes, all the fours, etc. I thought, right, what do these buggers mean? And it wasn't until I did that when I did that, I really found my confidence with tarot when I was able to find my meanings for like the numbers and for the cards. And don't get me wrong, that's changed a lot since then, and it changes depending on decks. I feel like different decks have different feels for the numbers, but it was definitely numerology. That was the first thing that I properly said, no, do you know what? I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to find what works for me. And I did, and I've never looked back since. So I would recommend that for anyone who is learning, definitely. First tarot deck that you rehomed, I'm going back here to the Jonathan D tarot. That's this one. So I gifted this to my uncle when I was going back to when I was really young. I only had this one and the original Rider Waite Smith. Um, so yeah, I only really needed one at the time, so I gifted this to my uncle. I suppose I still only really need one, but you know what I mean. So that was the first one that I rehomed. The first tarot deck that touched me emotionally, so this was difficult because I've obviously gone back quite a long time since I first started working with tarot. But I think the first one that I would say really touched me emotionally would be the Marielle. So if I go back to this is my kind of a first edition that's trimmed. Um, this was definitely the first deck that just stirred something in me that I just wasn't sure what I was feeling. And for a long time, I actually didn't work too heavily with this deck. It's really been recently when I've been doing the study group that I've really gotten into using this deck all the time, and it's become a favourite. But this was the first one that just it stirred something inside me that I couldn't quite explain. Obviously, I felt there's been that kind of so when you do readings for people and you feel like you help people, that touches you emotionally, but I feel as though that's more to do with the whole experience, not necessarily just the deck. But this was like just purely down to the artwork on this deck. Um, that stirred that something deep inside me. The final prompt is the first tarot inspired artwork that you made. I'm going to move all these out the way. So I am not. I, I know people might give me into trouble for saying this, but I am not an artist, or I wouldn't call myself or consider myself an artist. Drawing, I liked it when I was younger, but it's not something that I do as an adult really. But a couple of years back, there was a YouTube channel called Wolf Meets Witch, or Witch Meets Wolf. It was Elle and Shane, and they did a wee series on like drawing each tarot card in. So you had a minute and 5 seconds to draw each card, and week by week we would kind of tackle however many cards we could get to. I don't think I've got well, I know I don't have all of the drawings that I did here, but I do have some. So like Ace of Fire, Two of Fire. Um, it was just kind of they were just wee doodles. Some of them better than other. Oh, I remember this. So I thought, well, I would need to be quick, and plus, why even put the person on? Why not just have the horse and the wand? And it wasn't until the time was up and I finished the drawing that I realised I'd basically drawn a pole dancing horse, completely unintentional, but there he is. That's my pole dancing horse. So that was one of my one of my first tarot inspired artworks. Um, So yeah, some of them are better than others, but they were just wee quick drawings. Um, but yeah, so that's it. That is the tag. Thank you very much to Logan for creating this. Really enjoyed doing it and sharing with everyone. Um, Thanks very much to all you guys for watching. If you've managed to stay with me, take care, and I shall see you all later. Bye bye.